Item: SCP-793. Object Class: Euclid. Zone of Denial: Current 13.4 meters. Special Containment Procedures: SCP-793 is to be marked with stakes marking the perimeter of the Zone of Denial. A base distance of 13.4 meters from each side of the medicinal center is to be marked as the Zone of Denial, with a second perimeter extending the Zone of Denial out an extra 50 meters to be regarded as the Restricted Zone. Signs placed on the perimeter of the Zone of Denial must state no unauthorized entrance in the following languages: English, French, Swahili, Lubakase, Kikongo, and Luganda. When testing, access is to be restricted to Class Ds. No other Foundation personnel are to be allowed entrance. The future installation of security cameras around the hospital is a possibility. Description: SCP-793 is described as a hyper-reproductive paranormal variation of Human Congo trypanosomiasis, a parasitic protozoa also known as the African sleeping sickness, inhabiting the abandoned medicinal center located in data expunged, built by missionaries in 18. SCP-793's first known appearance was documented in 19. The hospital was subsequently relinquished from use years after due to exponential growth of SCP-793, but it was never demolished due to superstitions the populace and prominent and tribes held. In 19, the hospital was secured by the Foundation. SCP-793, in its passive form, does not appear to exist unless a suitable human host enters the Zone of Denial, ZOD, which is currently estimated to be 13.4 meters from any point around the hospital. When a human enters the Zone of Denial, the organism will appear spontaneously inside the human circulatory system. Unlike a normal form of trypanosomiasis, which has a limited rate of reproduction, the reproductive rate of SCP-793 increases proportionally to the subject's distance into the ZOD. For example, when a subject is at the edge of the ZOD, SCP-793 will reproduce at 5% the speed of Human Congo trypanosomiasis, but once inside the hospital, where reproductive capability is at a constant, SCP-793 cells will reproduce at 400% the speed of their cousin. Symptoms appear to be dissimilar to those of normal Congo trypanosomiasis, with a notable increase in hysteria and swelling of the lymph nodes. The opposite occurs when a subject leaves the ZOD. The reproductive rate decreases, and parasites will spontaneously disappear, with no visible signs of cell death. Somatic cells whose deaths can be attributed to SCP-793 will appear as if origination suddenly occurs, not as of the result of general somatic mitosis. The symptoms will fade to those of earlier stages, from the neurological phase going to the haemolymphatic stage, etc., until there are no signs of the protist existing when a human victim exits the ZOD. One final note about possible human death as the result of SCP-793's actions: the reversal effects reverse victim death completely. Once the deceased are rescued from the maximum reproductive zone, somatic cells appear immediately and any remaining instances of SCP-793 disappear. Upon the so-called undeath, individuals often recall extreme pain due to the reconstruction of their body, mostly regarded as something along the lines of thousands of knives piercing their body, and have no recollection of ever entering the Zone of Denial or any knowledge of SCP-793. SCP-793's reversal effects only regard any damage it causes a human. Bodies whose deaths are attributed to other causes, such as normal Human Congo trypanosomiasis, will not be affected. SCP-793 does not appear on anything that is not living human tissue. Appearance of SCP-793 does occur on partial entrance of a human to the Zone of Denial and is limited to the fraction of the human that is in the Zone of Denial. Items brought out of the hospital have no unique effect attached to them.